During the British Raj, there was unrest and discontent amongst the people of India. The Hindu soldiers protested against the addition of Gurkha, Sikh and lower caste soldiers to their ranks. The use of animal grease on the cartridges of the newly introduced Enfield rifles was the last straw. While loading the rifles, soldiers had to bite off the end of the cartridges. It was made up of either pig or cow fat, which violated the religious sentiments of the Muslim and Hindu soldiers. In 1857, 3 regiments of the army refused to use the ammunition of the Enfield rifles and demanded that Bahadur Shah Zafar take over as the ruler of India and the head of the rebels. Mangal Pandey is one of the most famous figures of this uprising who attacked the British regiment. He was later arrested and hanged. This uprising came to be known as the Sepoy Mutiny or the Revolt of 1857. Soon after, another regiment revolted. 90,000 men from the Bengal army joined the mutiny. After suffering major losses in Kanpur and Lucknow, the British sought the help of the loyal Sikh and Gurkha forces and managed to ward off the army of rebels near Delhi. In response to the mutiny, the British Parliament passed an act abolishing the East India Company. India became a crown colony to be governed by the British Parliament directly. In the following year, the title of Viceroy was bestowed upon the Governor-General of India by Queen Victoria. She introduced a policy of divide and rule which prevented Indians from uniting to rebel against her. Rani Lakshmi Bai. Lakshmi Bai, the Rani of Jhansi, was the queen of the Maratha-ruled princely state of Jhansi, situated in the northern part of India. Her father worked at the Peshwa court of Bithur, and because of his influence at court, Lakshmi Bai had more independence than most women. She studied self-defense, horsemanship, archery, and even formed her own army out of her female friends at court. Lakshmi Bai was married to Raja Gangadhar Rao Nevalkar, the Maharaja of Jhansi in 1842 at the early age of 7. She gave birth to a son, Damodar Rao, in 1851. However, the child died when he was about 4 months old. After his death, the Raja and Rani of Jhansi adopted Anand Rao. It is said that Gangadhar never recovered from his son's death and died on 21st November 1853. Lord Dalhousie, the Governor-General of India at that time, tried to take advantage of the misfortune of Jhansi to expand the British Empire. In 1854, Rani of Jhansi was granted an annual pension of 60,000 and was ordered to leave the Jhansi fort. She was, however, firm on the decision to not give up the dominion of Jhansi to Britishers. For strengthening the defense of Jhansi, Rani Lakshmi Bai assembled an army of rebels which also included women. For this great cause, she was also supported by brave warriors like Ghulam Ghaus Khan, Dost Khan, and Diwan Jawahar Singh. On 10th May 1857, the Indian rebellion started in Meerut. This began after the rumor that new bullet casings for the Enfield rifles were coated with pork and beef fat, and unrest began to spread throughout India. Rani Lakshmi Bai had always been hesitant about rebelling against the British. Her hesitation eventually came to an end when British troops arrived under Sir Hugh Rose and laid siege to Jhansi on 23rd March 1858. Along with the young Damodar Rao, the Rani decamped to Kalpi along with her troops, where she joined other rebel forces including those of Tatya Tope. However, on 17th June 1858, while battling against the 8th Musars in Kota Ki Serai, near the Fulbagh area of Gwalior, she was killed in battle. The British captured Gwalior 3 days later. In the British report of the battle, General Sir Hugh Rose commented that the Rani, remarkable for her beauty, cleverness and perseverance, had been the most dangerous of all rebel leaders. Her adopted son Damodar Rao fled with his mother's aides. The freedom struggle. Men who are known for their peaceful methods, such as Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramhans, Aurobindo Ghosh, Rabindranath Tagore, and many others, started spreading the word to the people that everyone must be passionate about gaining freedom. After World War I, the British imposed stricter legislation in India to curb the people they felt were political extremists. While all hope was diminishing, emerged a man whom the country began to revere, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Gandhi became the undisputed leader of the freedom struggle. He advocated the policy of satyagraha and civil disobedience. Mahatma Gandhi, as he was known, inspired millions to follow in his path. His vision took the freedom struggle to the national level. On 13th April 1919, the British, led by General Dyer, massacred hundreds of unarmed civilians, including women and children, who were attending a meeting. This incident is known as the Jallianwala Bagh tragedy in Amritsar, which triggered off nationwide hatred for the British rule. In response, Gandhi launched the non-cooperation movement. He urged the people to refuse to pay taxes and forsake British titles and honours. This was a serious problem for the government. Gandhi embarked on a mission of about 400 kilometers from Ahmedabad to Dandi, famously known as the Dandi March. And at Dandi, the law was broken by making salt from seawater. The British responded by making widespread arrests and firing on the crowds. Gandhi too was sent to jail a number of times. Armed rebellions against the British continued to grow in several parts of India. Leaders such as Bhagat Singh and Chandrasekhar Azad led acts of violence against the British. But soon, the revolutionary activities died down and many rebel leaders joined political parties. Subhash Chandra Bose was born on 23rd January 1897 to Janakinath Bose, a well-reputed advocate, and Prabhavati Devi. Subhash Chandra Bose's nationalistic temperament first came to light at the Presidency College, Calcutta, when he was rusticated for assaulting Professor Oaten for his anti-India comments. During the mid-1930s, Bose travelled in Europe, visiting Indian students and European politicians, including Mussolini. He observed party organization and saw communism and fascism in action. In 1938, he had become a leader of national stature and agreed to accept the nomination as Congress President. He stood for Swaraj, self-governance. But this, however, meant a confrontation with Gandhi, which also created a rift between him and Nehru. On the outbreak of World War II, Bose advocated a campaign of mass civil disobedience to protest against Viceroy Lord Linlithgow's decision to declare war on India's behalf without consulting the Congress leadership. Bose organized mass protests in Calcutta, calling for the Holwell Monument, which then stood at the corner of Dalhousie Square, to be removed. Bose was thrown into jail but was released following a 7-day hunger strike. Bose's house in Calcutta was kept under surveillance by the CID following his release. Bose planned an escape with the help of his nephew, Sisir K. Bose, in a car dressed as a Pathan, sporting a long beard which he grew overnight. Bose escaped to Germany via Afghanistan and the Soviet Union. In Germany, to Hitler and Bose. I swear by God this holy oath that I will obey the leader of the German race and state, Adolf Hitler, as the commander of the German armed forces in the fight for India, whose leader is Subhash Chandra Bose. Matters worsened when the now retreating German army would be in no position to offer him help in driving the British from India. So, in 1943, Bose turned his back on his legionaries and slipped secretly away aboard a submarine bound for Japan. Traveling on board the German submarine U-180 around the Cape of Good Hope to Imperial Japan via Japanese submarine I-29. This was the only civilian transfer between two submarines of two different navies in World War II. The idea of a liberation army was revived with the help of Subhash Chandra Bose in the Far East in 1943. Bose took control of the Indian National Army and was able to reorganize the fledgling army and gathered massive support among the expatriate Indian population in Southeast Asia. Spoken as a part of a motivational speech for the Indian National Army at a rally of Indians in Burma on July 4, 1944, Bose's most famous quote was, "Give me blood and I shall give you freedom." In this, he urged the people of India to join him in his fight against the British Raj. The INA's first commitment was in the Japanese thrust towards the eastern Indian frontiers of Manipur. The INA and Japanese also took possession of Andaman and Nicobar Islands in 1942. It was the Battle of Kohima and Imphal which had a significant impact on the Indian National Army. The Japanese could no longer fund their armies and eventually surrendered. The INA were no match for the British troops without the help of the Japanese and therefore surrendered to the British as well. Mystery still surrounds the disappearance and eventual death of Bose, though it is said that he is alleged to have died in a plane crash in Taipei, Taiwan, on 18 August 1945 while en route to Tokyo. The Imperial Japanese Air Force bomber he was traveling on had engine trouble, and when it crashed, Bose was badly burned, dying in a local hospital few hours later. Clement Attlee, the then Prime Minister of the British, finally declared that India would be granted independence. In 1947, the Muslim League launched Direct Action Day. Its purpose was to convey that an undivided India would no longer be possible. On June 3, 1947, Lord Mountbatten, the last British Governor-General in India, announced the partitioning of India into a secular India and a Muslim Pakistan. On August 14, 1947, Pakistan was declared as a separate nation with Muhammad Ali Jinnah as its leader. On August 15, 1947, at the stroke of midnight, India was declared an independent nation. This joyous period was also scarred with violent clashes between Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs. At least 1,000 people were said to have been killed during this period. Around 11 million Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs crossed borders. In the midst of all this confusion and bloodshed, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru requested Lord Mountbatten to continue as the Governor-General until the next year, when he would be replaced by Rajgopalachari. The year following independence, Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated. The entire nation mourned his death. 2 years following Gandhi's death, the Constitution of India was drafted, and on 26 January 1950, the Republic of India was proclaimed. The state of Goa still remained under Portuguese rule even after independence. However, on December 19, 1961, it was annexed to India when the Indian Army, backed by the Air Force, ended the Portuguese rule.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड